of the galactic center. Okay, so this phase means that enough galactic center pulses have been administered to the surface to allow the pure phase transition from liquid water, which he equates to being the matrix society, into water vapor, a galactic society, in some extremely small and isolated areas on the surface. Okay, so he's describing the liquid water being the matrix and then into the water vapor, which is galactic. This is the difference between density and crystallization. Okay, this is very similar to what Gab does with the plasma. When he talks about GANs, gas at a nanostate, GANs particles, nanoparticles, that is the shift out of this pure density into crystallization. Our crystallized light bodies are more similar to a vapor, to nanoparticles, than they are to a dense form of an element. Okay, so that's what he is describing, the crystallization process that has been going on since January of 2019. And that basically when enough influx of energy has allowed us to crystallize to a certain extent. And he says in small and isolated areas on the surface, meaning all the light workers around the planet who are creating these little spaces and environments where they are going through this process, that was phase 2. And he says the condensation phase, these bubbles of heaven emerge, right? And a bubble of heaven is when you or a group of beings is in a 5th dimensional environment, meaning you plus anybody else creates a 5th dimensional environment, a bubble of heaven. And that those have been popping up, of course, all over the planet. And he says that he feels that this phase is still ongoing. I would go as far to say that this phase is complete or is completing by the end of this year, 2022. Now he says during this phase, the bubbles of heaven get slowly and progressively larger with less entropy, whereas the surrounding matrix society gets progressively more unstable with more entropy. So what we're seeing now happen as the matrix is getting completely destabilized, we are all creating bubbles of heaven. Wherever you are in the world, you are creating a bubble of 5th dimensional frequency in your quantum field. So if that's in your room, at your home, whatever it may be, you're creating that bubble of heaven to hold the higher dimensional frequencies while the external matrix begins destabilizing. Okay, so the goal of the light workers and coming together as soul families and all of these kind of things is to create pockets, bubbles of 5th dimensional heaven frequencies that can hold the stabilization of the planet while everything else becomes destabilized. So I feel by the end of this year, phase 2 will be complete, meaning all of the bubbles of heaven have been completed across the planet. We have enough beings across the planet who are holding that 5th dimensional space, no matter where they are in the world, that is allowing now the destabilization of the matrix to occur. So it may go past the end of the year, but I do feel we're wrapping up this phase 2 that he's talking about. Now he says the 3rd phase is called the bubble elevation phase. This I definitely feel is next year. Whether that starts in January or February or March or whatever, it's going to be next year. I think the 3rd phase is going to be activated. And he says this phase sees the pulses from the galactic central sun rising exponentially with more and more bubbles of heaven actively forming and the matrix